So if everything feels like too much lately and you don't understand, why you can't cope anymore, this actually might be burnout. And I mean menopause burnout. Hi, I'm Rhiannon and welcome to Freedom Over 40. I've got my notes here with me as always. So today I want to talk to you about something so many people, so many women experience during menopause, just like me. But they really feel able to admit it out loud to themselves that what they could be experiencing is burnout. This exhausted feeling, like you're forever tired, you're forever fatigued. And it's not just about being tired, but that deep emotional and mental exhaustion, where even the smallest thing can still feel overwhelming sometimes. Now, what it really feels like to me, in my experience with menopausal burnout, it can be feeling constantly overwhelmed, where everything just seems too much. It could be the slightest thing. You're snapping or you're crying easily. You're struggling to make decisions. Like you used to be very, easy to make decisions. You used to, juggle things, no problem. And you could bounce from one thing to another. But now you find yourself procrastinating, overthinking. You're weighing up too much, you're overthinking things instead of just making a straightforward decision and getting on with it. You could feel numb or disconnected. You also may feel like you want to withdraw from people, like you just don't want to socialize anymore. You don't want to be seen. Basically, you're quite happy just to go home, shut the door, and that's it. Until you have to really, integrate with people or communicate with people. And everything feels like it's an effort. Like just getting up out of bed in the morning is more of an effort. To brushing your teeth, having a shower, making your breakfast, planning your day, going to work, dealing with people, answering emails, answering the phone, making a conversation, everything feels just too much. And the confusing part is that there's nothing dramatic that may have changed even. It just all of a sudden it just feels like your life is completely different. Here's the part that no one explains properly though. Okay. The menopause affects your hormones. Now, your hormones are all over the shop, which then affects your sleep, it affects your energy, it affects your way that you think, the way that you feel. It can affect your sleep quality, which we all know happens, the lack of sleep, your stress intolerance, your tolerance to people, your tolerance to things in work that would normally not faze you now bothers you straight away. Your emotional regulation, you could be just crying at the slightest of things which normally wouldn't bother you before, but now they do. And your nervous system, like things literally affect you, things get on your nerves, you feel more anxious. Just getting in the car and being able to drive somewhere, where you used to be able to be so independent, driving, all over the place on the motorway, going through places that you wouldn't necessarily drive before, would now give you really bad anxiety. And I've noticed that in myself, considering I've been driving over 25 years now. And I learned to drive in London. So, I'm not saying I'm the best of drivers, but I certainly learned to have my wits about me. London being at the time where I learned was extremely busy. 24/7, the traffic and the people, and all sorts of transport on the road at the time. So I definitely learned to grow confidence in driving behind the wheel of a car. Now, if I was to go somewhere that I haven't been before, I'd really be like weighing up: do I really need to go? Do I really need to drive somewhere that I've not been to before? And I'd be checking things a bit more than I would normally. Um, so what I also would say is, like the way that you would have coped with things throughout life for over years, over a period of time, pushing through and like juggling everything and putting yourself last, suddenly stops working, and you feel like you can no longer do that anymore. The years of, having to care for others, and, when you go into work and, holding a job down, maybe more than one job, always being the strong person, the strong one in the family to try and keep everybody together like the glue of the family. But also then ignoring your needs, your own needs at the same time. And menopause often becomes the breaking point, if I'm honest. It really can hit you like a sledgehammer. And it's quite unnerving because like I say, you've gone from being this strong, independent person, spinning all these plates in the air, and then next thing you know, you just can't even function. The thought, like I say, of getting out of bed in the morning is a task. Your joints ache, you're exhausted, you haven't slept many hours at all. You feel dehydrated, you feel drained, you feel like you've just got no energy, and the brain fog, and the fact that you can't remember things like you used to. And it all gives you this added sort of anxious feeling, because it's like you feel like everything is just out of control. And when you're used to being the one in control and functioning, now has completely changed, and it's quite scary if you're used to being the one in control and being very independent, and now this hormonal change, this hormonal imbalance in you, is what's creating this unnerving feeling. So, what I want you to understand is this is important, and I really want you to hear this, okay? Menopause burnout is not a weakness, and it's not laziness, and it's certainly not failure. Burnout is your body saying that you can't keep living like this anymore. You really do have to look after yourself. You have to look after both your mental health and your physical health. And whether you decide to go down the route of having hormone replacement therapy, also known as HRT, or whether you don't, that's entirely up to you. But I would definitely advise you to go and seek medical professional help, and then discuss what your options are, what's suitable for you. There are other alternatives out there now that are not, prescribed, but are like herbal remedies and things. I'm not saying they work, but there's an option there for you to try them. Do your research, of course. Um, but what I also want to say is, it's not like a personal flaw that you're feeling or that you're going through. It's a signal that basically something does need to change. And this is what I'm saying to you about, you do need to go and seek advice, professional advice, because you are not going to be able to function if you don't do something about it. You can't keep staying in this wallow of, oh my God, what am I going to do? You've really got to start taking control the best way that you can. Of course, you can't control the hormones fully. It's going to be happening whether we like it or not. And it's going to be happening for quite some time, quite a lengthy period. And we could be talking years. And I don't say that to scaremonger people. I'm saying it because it's fact. It's something that I had to get used to. And, it's taken me some time to get my head around it. And I still get my moments. I still get days where I just feel like I could literally sleep on a chicken's lip, as I say, like I've got no energy and I could just literally sleep standing, that kind of feeling. Because the time that you want to sleep is the time that you can't, because it's daytime and you're either in work or you're having to drive somewhere or go somewhere or do something, and you can't go to bed, you can't go to sleep. Which can be really frustrating, and it can really get you, because you're so exhausted. So, what I want you to understand also is that so many women will carry guilt on top of the burnout. They feel guilty that they can no longer do and stay to their peak, performance, what they used to be in, and the way that they always used to be around the family and holding things together, and everybody coming to them as a go-to. Now you're having to go and reach out for help, or you're the one that's now going to have to look at alternatives so that you can get from A to B basically and get things done. And there's nothing wrong in that. Like I say, things will change. You have to change, and you do have to adapt, because otherwise, it's going to become 10 times worse. And I say that with the utmost love and respect, but you really do need to look at alternative ways now and put things in place. And don't be afraid to say to people, look, I am struggling. I am going through the change. It is really affecting me, both physically and mentally. And I've got to take some time, to look after myself now, because, like I say, this is something that's going to happen over a length of time, and we don't know how long for. Some women are lucky and they can just sail through with very little to no major effects to them, but a lot of us women from the ages of 30s, late 30s, 40s and 50s up, are significantly hit hard with the menopause and the various different symptoms. I mean, there's loads, there's well over 30, 40 different types of symptoms for menopause, in fact. Something like I didn't realize until I started going through the change was bladder weakness. Now, I've never had children, so I only associated having a weak bladder when you had children. But little did I know that it was actually something you experience through menopause. And, I'm having, I have to, well, basically go to the toilet a lot more. I basically urinate a lot more than I used to because I can't seem to hold as much of a bladder as I used to, and I'm just used to it now. The good thing is I get more steps in every time I go to the bathroom, and I try and turn it around as a positive. But that said, it is frustrating and it is annoying, especially at night time, even though I reduce my caffeine intake, before going to bed, so that I try to prevent, getting up in the night. It still happens, I still end up, going to the bathroom 2, 3 times a night sometimes. And it's so annoying because, I want to sleep. I want to be fully, rested before I get up the following day. And of course, when I know I've had a bad night's sleep, it will definitely have a knock on effect, no matter how much I try to be positive and, I try to function and push on. I still will feel extremely drained, and it's harder then to be top of your game basically, and be switched on and on the ball, because like I say, all you want to do then is literally curl up and go to sleep, and you can't. So there's so many different types of symptoms and experiences that you will go through. But helped me basically was being realistic, and I just want to share with you what helped me, not as a medical advice, but just real life experience. I basically stopped minimizing how I felt, like when it came to being exhausted. I minimized the fact about, I stopped minimizing, sorry, the way that I felt, and I lowered the expectations that I set upon myself now. I realize I can no longer do as much as I used to do when I was in my 20s and early 30s. And now I've got to slow down. If I'm going to be able to function still, and still hold down a job and other commitments, I need to slow down, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to do everything. That time where I had all this energy and, where my joints didn't hurt, that's gone. I am in a lot of pain at times. So I feel that I've got to really look out for myself now before I can do anything else. Um, I slowed my pace down, even when I felt uncomfortable. Like I say, I'm used to doing everything 100 miles an hour, and I really can't now. I have to think, right, what can I do today? And I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself. I will have a list of things to do. And say if there's 10 items on a list, if I can achieve 3 to 5 things, happy days. If I don't, no big deal. It will just roll on to the next day. And again, I will just reassess and prioritize what I can achieve, what I can do for that day. And then I'll go from there, and I'll just tick it off. And that's a bit of it, I'll get self-satisfaction from that. Sometimes if I don't always do things around the house, like housework and things, I will do 3 to 5 things, and if I manage to do 1 or 2 of those things on my list, great. If I can do more than that, fantastic. It just, again, depends on if I've got to go out the door and do other things as well. I have caring responsibilities, so that means I'm on the go and back and forth to the house as well. So I'm not always home, even when I should be. Those times have changed as well. So like I say, things do get in the way, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself anymore. I'm just going to understand and respect the fact that I'm trying my best, and that's all I can do. um, Another thing I want to do as well, and I have started doing from my late 30s onwards, is I protected my energy, and I still continue to protect my energy and the people that I'm with. My circle is getting smaller and smaller, both friends and family. I'm not tolerant with people's attitude and their opinion on things. Everyone's entitled to them, but it doesn't mean that what they're saying to me is nice, or is needed. And if I didn't ask for it, then as defensive as it may sound, if people are rude to me with their thoughts and opinions and I didn't ask for it, then I shut the door on them, because I don't want to know. I'm not having them bringing me down with my mental health. If I'm doing something that I feel makes me happy, then I'm going to pursue it, whether they like it or not. If I create something that I think will help others, which is all positive, and they don't like it or they're judgmental, then fine. There's a boundary there. And so I shut the door on them, and that's what I've done. And I'm quite happy to do it as well, because I'm not there to badmouth or put people down, but whether they're friends or family, so-called friends or family, there's got to be a limit with things. And like I say, if people have got nothing good to say, then don't say it. That's basically where I've come from, the way I was brought up. And if people can't be nice about things, then I don't want to hear it, really. Now, of course, if I was in danger, yeah, speak up. But I'm certainly not putting myself in positions where I'm going to be in danger. So yeah. The other thing I'd like to say as well, I've said no without over explaining. And I think that's the one thing as well, when it comes to friends or family, work colleagues, even, if someone's asked me something and it's not within my work, obligations or tasks. And if they said no, then no means no, and sometimes they're looking at me, waiting for me to explain, and I'm not. You asked me a question, I've responded, not being disrespectful. I just simply saying no because I already know where my limits are, and I don't have the capacity to be able to do anything extra that's going to impact me and my job. And sometimes I've had to do that. And I've also stopped comparing myself to who I used to be. Um, I realize now I'm 46. I'm now at a different stage in my life. I'm not the person that used to be a gym bunny and I used to go kickboxing in my 20s. I don't have all this energy. I'm not the shape and the size and the physicality that I used to be. I function so much different now. I've had to slow down. I don't have endless hours of sleep each night. I don't get that anymore. So I've had to really think about what is easier for me to do and what is safer all around, and for me to function. And if that means that I've got to stop doing things or reduce what I do, then so be it. That's what I do. So what helped me wasn't doing more, it was about doing less. And it's basically it's doing less without feeling guilty. And I want you to stop feeling guilty for saying no and for doing less and reducing what you would normally do or stop doing, because like I say, if it helps keep you safe mentally and physically, then that's the ultimate goal. Everything else is a second. You come first, and your mental health and your physical. So without that, you cannot do anything else. So you really do have to look at things in a different light now moving forward. And what I want to ask you is this: what if menopause, burnout isn't the end? What if like feeling exhausted isn't the end? What if it's just a turning point, where, a moment where your body is saying slow down and reassess and choose yourself and stop living in survival mode is a critical key now and stage in your life. Menopause doesn't ask us to push harder, it asks us to live differently. And I think this is the way you've got to really look at yourself and how you apply things now, how you apply yourself to things, how you apply how you function and do your job or your family life, whatever it is, how you drive, where you go, what you do. I think it's all about looking at it as you're just operating differently now to how you used to. There's no failure in that. There's no reason to feel guilty in that. It's simply keeping yourself safe and being safe for others. And I think that's crucial moving forward. So if you're watching this and you feel burned out emotionally, mentally, physically, I want you to know this: you're not broken, you're not behind, and you're not failing. You're responding to your body that needs a different way of living. Okay? Don't be hard on yourself, because the right thing is actually stopping, breathing, and thinking, right, okay, let's have 5 minutes here to rethink about things first before going ahead and doing something else or planning something else. So this channel, Freedom Over 40, is about honest conversations, and I really want to build this community for people, and also for people that have partners, wives, spouses, family members, friends, work colleagues that are going through the menopause. And if you want to understand more, of course, you're welcome to be here too, to learn more and to understand what it's like to go through this, because it really is life changing. But like I say, don't take this as a negative, take this as a positive, that it's a positive step for you and a positive step in the right direction on how you move forward with your life now. And just look at it that you're just looking at life differently and you're going to function differently moving forward. but it's all within the right means of being safe. And um, it's a way to keep you safe and to function, I think, ultimately. So thank you all for being here. And I just want you to understand the menopause burnout, it didn't stop me. It taught me how to choose myself, and you should choose you too. Until the next time, take care, stay blessed.